The billionaire chef didn't expect love to walk through his door. The broken compass. Marcus Reed stood at the gleaming steel counter of his kitchen, hands moving with practiced precision as he finished plating the evening's final dish. Outside, rain lashed against the windows of Hearth and Haven, the exclusive hillside restaurant he'd built from the ashes of his former life. Thunder cracked and Marcus glanced up. The restaurant was empty now, the last guests having departed an hour ago, just as he preferred it. Solitude had become his sanctuary since the restaurant scandal that had cost him his reputation in Manhattan 3 years ago. The accusations of stealing recipes, the betrayal by his business partner, and the public humiliation had driven him to this remote corner of the Catskills, where his grandfather's old property offered escape. He wiped his hands and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The storm had intensified, turning the winding mountain road into a treacherous ribbon of water and mud. His fingers unconsciously traced the burn scar that ran from his right wrist to his elbow, a permanent reminder of the night he'd lost everything. A sudden flash of headlights caught his attention as a vehicle struggled up the steep driveway. Marcus frowned. He hadn't approved any late reservations, and Hearth and Haven operated strictly by appointment only, a policy that preserved his privacy and kept away curious food critics hoping to discover what had become of the once celebrated chef. The car, an older model sedan, came to a sputtering halt near the entrance. Through sheets of rain, Marcus watched as a slender figure emerged, clutching what appeared to be camera equipment, shoulders hunched against the downpour. With a resigned sigh, he moved to the door. Whatever lost tourist had stumbled upon his restaurant would need to be redirected. Politely but firmly. "We're closed!" he called as he opened the heavy wooden door, his voice nearly lost in the howl of wind. The woman looked up, rainwater streaming down her face, dark hair plastered to her cheeks. "I'm so sorry!" she shouted over the storm. "My car started making terrible noises, and then your lights were the only ones I could see." Her eyes, a striking amber color, held a mixture of desperation and determination. "Could I possibly wait inside until the worst passes? I tried calling for help, but there's no signal." Marcus hesitated, his instinct to refuse warring with basic human decency. "Please," she added, shifting the expensive-looking camera bag to protect it from the rain. "I promise I won't be a bother." Something in her expression, vulnerable yet resolute, resonated with him. Against his better judgment, Marcus stepped aside. "Come in," he said, his voice gruff from disuse. "But the kitchen's closed." "Thank you," she breathed, stepping into the warmth of the restaurant. "I'm Sophia Turner." She extended her hand, water dripping from her sleeve. Marcus reluctantly took it. "Marcus Reed." He noticed her eyes widen slightly at his name, scanning his face with newfound interest. He tensed, waiting for the inevitable recognition, the questions about his fall from grace. Instead, she simply smiled. "Nice to meet you, Marcus. And really, thank you for not leaving me out in that biblical deluge." As he led her toward the fireplace, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully constructed solitude had just experienced its first significant crack. Aperture and appetite. Sophia sat by the roaring fireplace, wrapped in the wool blanket Marcus had reluctantly provided. Steam rose from the mug of tea in her hands as she watched him move about the kitchen with mesmerizing efficiency. "You really don't need to cook anything," she called, though the growl of her stomach betrayed her. "I'm already imposing enough." Marcus glanced up from the cutting board where he was dicing mushrooms with precise, fluid movements. "It's just a simple risotto. Besides," he added with a hint of professional pride, "I can't have someone leaving Hearth and Haven hungry. Even an uninvited guest." Despite his gruff exterior, there was something graceful about the way he navigated his domain. Sophia reached for her camera bag, then stopped herself. Professional photographers didn't usually ask permission, but something told her Marcus valued his privacy. "Would you mind if I took a few pictures? The light in here is extraordinary." His knife paused mid-slice. "Why?" "I'm working on a photography series about people who are passionate about their craft. The way you move in that kitchen," she hesitated, "it tells a story." Marcus resumed chopping, his rhythm slightly disrupted. "No faces," Sophia nodded, understanding the boundary. She unpacked her camera, adjusting settings as she observed him through the viewfinder. His hands became her focus, strong, scarred, yet impossibly gentle with each ingredient. She captured the concentration in his posture, the respect in how he handled his tools. 20 minutes later, he placed a steaming bowl of wild mushroom risotto before her. The aroma alone was transcendent. "This is—" She searched for words after her first bite. "I don't have the vocabulary for how good this is." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Food doesn't need vocabulary, just honesty. As the storm raged outside, they fell into unexpected conversation. Sophia told him about her photography career, the early success documenting conflict zones, followed by burnout that led her to this current project documenting artisans and their crafts. "And you?" she asked. "Have you always been a chef?" Marcus stiffened. "Yes, but not always here." His tone discouraged further questions. Instead, Sophia showed him some of the photographs she'd taken that evening. One in particular caught his attention. His hand pouring olive oil, the golden liquid catching the firelight, transforming the simple act into something almost sacred. "You see things differently," he observed quietly. "So do you," she replied. "It's in your food." When the storm finally subsided near midnight, Marcus insisted on checking her car. The diagnosis wasn't good, a blown head gasket that would require a tow and several days of repairs. "There's a guest room upstairs," he offered reluctantly. "You can stay until morning when I can drive you to town." That night, in the small but comfortable room above the restaurant, Sophia reviewed her photographs. In one, caught almost by accident, Marcus's profile was partially visible as he tasted his creation, and there, for a fleeting moment, was an expression of such profound connection to his craft that it made her breath catch. She fell asleep wondering about the story behind his scars, both the visible one on his arm and the deeper ones she sensed beneath his carefully maintained reserve. Simmering hearts. 3 days had passed since Sophia's car had broken down. 3 days that had somehow stretched into a week by mutual unspoken agreement. With her vehicle still awaiting parts at the local garage, Sophia had offered to help around the restaurant in exchange for lodging. "These are beautiful," Marcus said, reviewing the photos she'd taken for his website. A website he'd never bothered to update until she'd convinced him it might attract the right kind of clientele. Those who appreciated food rather than celebrity. "The subject makes it easy," she replied, noticing how he'd begun to stand closer to her than strictly necessary. Their days had fallen into a rhythm. Mornings spent foraging in the woods behind the restaurant for wild ingredients, afternoons preparing for the evening's limited reservations, and nights talking by the fire after the last guest departed. Sophia documented it all through her lens, while Marcus expressed himself through increasingly inspired dishes that he created specifically for her after hours. "I have something for you to try," he said one evening, presenting a dessert unlike any she'd seen before. "It's inspired by your sunset photographs from yesterday." The dish featured caramelized peaches arranged like a setting sun, surrounded by a delicate pattern of raspberry coulis that mimicked the wispy clouds she'd captured. "That's—" Emotion caught in her throat. "You made my photograph into food." "You've been turning my food into photographs," he said with a shrug that failed to disguise the significance of the gesture. Their eyes held, and the air between them changed, charged with something neither had acknowledged until now. "Marcus," she began, "will you tell me what happened? Before this place?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with remembered pain. "I was the executive chef at Lumiere in Manhattan. Rising star, 2 Michelin stars by 30. His hands flexed reflexively. Then my business partner accused me of stealing recipes from our sous chef. He had fabricated evidence, convinced everyone I was a fraud." Marcus touched his scarred arm. "The night everything fell apart, there was a kitchen fire. I got everyone out, but you couldn't save your reputation," she finished softly. "I didn't try. Maybe that proves I was guilty." Sophia moved closer, her fingers gently tracing his scar. "Or maybe it proves you valued truth over perception." His breath caught at her touch. "Why are you really here, Sophia? Your car's been fixed for days." "Because I recognize a kindred spirit," she whispered. "Someone who's retreated from the world not out of weakness, but because they feel too much." When his lips finally met hers, it was like the first taste of a perfectly balanced dish, surprising yet somehow inevitable. His hands cradled her face with the same care he showed his most delicate ingredients. They moved upstairs to his bedroom rather than her temporary quarters, shedding layers of clothing and reserve with each step. In the soft lamplight, Sophia explored the map of scars and stories written across his body, while Marcus discovered the curves and contours of hers with chef's hands that knew exactly how and where to touch. "I haven't let anyone this close in years," he murmured against her collarbone. "I know," she replied, guiding his hand to her heart. "Neither have I." Their bodies moved together with the same intuitive harmony they'd developed in the kitchen, anticipating, responding, creating something neither could make alone. When release finally came, it washed over them like a wave breaking against the shore, powerful yet somehow peaceful. Afterwards, tangled in sheets in each other, Marcus admitted what they both knew. Whatever had started as temporary shelter from a storm had grown into something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Burnt edges. The morning light filtered through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the rumpled bedsheets. Sophia watched Marcus sleep, his face relaxed in a way she never saw when he was awake. 3 weeks had passed since that first night together, 3 weeks of discovery, both culinary and personal. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She slipped from bed and padded to the bathroom before answering. "Sophia Turner," she whispered. "Miss Turner, it's Martin Greenberg from Aperture magazine." The editor's voice crackled with excitement. "We've reviewed your portfolio submission, and I'm calling to offer you the feature spread." Her heart leaped. The prestigious magazine feature she'd applied for months ago, before Marcus, before Hearth and Haven, had become more than just another stop on her artisan project. "That's wonderful," she managed, her mind racing. "There's more," Martin continued. "The exhibition space in our New York gallery just had a cancellation. We'd like to offer you a solo show next month. Your Passionate Craftsman series is exactly what we're looking for." The opportunity was career-defining, the kind photographers waited lifetimes for. But it would mean leaving immediately for New York to prepare, leaving Marcus just as they'd begun to build something neither had expected. "I'll need to be in the city by," she asked, "Monday. 3 days from now. We'll need you there for at least 6 months while we prepare the exhibition." When she emerged from the bathroom, Marcus was awake, watching her with questioning eyes. "Good news?" he asked, noting her flushed cheeks. "Aperture magazine wants to feature my work, and they're offering me a solo exhibition." His face brightened with genuine pride. "Sophia, that's incredible." "In New York," she added quietly. "Starting Monday." The silence that followed felt like a physical presence between them. "For how long?" he finally asked, his voice carefully neutral. 6 months minimum." Marcus nodded slowly, rising from the bed to pull on his clothes. His movements were methodical, controlled. "You should take it," he said, not meeting her eyes. "It's an amazing opportunity." "I know, but—" "There's no but, Sophia." His tone hardened as he buttoned his shirt. "This is your career, your passion. And what about us?" she challenged, frustration building. "Does what we've built these past weeks mean nothing?" Marcus turned to the window, his shoulders tense. "We both knew this wasn't permanent. You were passing through. I was a convenient stop." The deliberate cruelty of his words stung like a slap. "Is that what you really think?" she demanded. "After everything we've shared?" "What I think," he said with devastating quietness, "is that I've been down this road before. Passion burns bright, then circumstances change, people leave. It's the natural order of things." "That's not fair. I'm not whoever hurt you before." "It doesn't matter." He moved toward the door, already retreating behind the walls she'd worked so hard to scale. "This restaurant is my life now. I can't leave it, and I won't ask you to give up your dream." "I'm not asking you to leave," Sophia protested, tears threatening. "We could figure something out." Long distance or no? The finality in his voice silenced her. Clean breaks are better. Less painful in the long run. As he left the room, Sophia sank onto the bed, the joy of her professional triumph now ash in her mouth. She'd thought she'd finally found someone who understood her, only to discover he was too wounded to take a chance on anything beyond his carefully controlled world. That afternoon, she packed her belongings while Marcus retreated to his kitchen, the clatter of pots and angry chopping the only indication of his presence. When her taxi arrived, he emerged briefly, his expression composed. Congratulations again, he said formally, as if the past weeks had been erased. You deserve this success. Sophia searched his face for any crack in the facade, any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with. Finding none, she simply nodded and got into the taxi. As the car wound down the hillside, she looked back at Hearth and Haven one last time. Through the kitchen window, she could see Marcus return to his chopping, his movements mechanical, his shoulders rigid with the effort of not looking up. The perfect blend. The gallery hummed with conversation and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Sophia moved among the crowd, accepting congratulations with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her exhibition, Hands That Create, had been open for 2 weeks now, drawing critical acclaim and surprisingly large crowds. At the center of the gallery hung the showpiece, an oversized print of hands preparing food illuminated by firelight. No face was visible, just those scarred, capable hands transforming simple ingredients into art. She'd titled it simply, Marcus. The emotion in this one is extraordinary, commented a critic who had followed her through the exhibition. The subject seems to be pouring his soul into that dish. He was, Sophia replied softly. 3 months had passed since she'd left the Catskills. 3 months of immersing herself in work, trying to forget the look in Marcus's eyes as she'd driven away. She'd called once, 2 weeks after arriving in New York, but the line had rung unanswered. The exhibition reception was winding down when Martin approached with an unfamiliar man in tow. Sophia, there's someone here who insisted on meeting you. Says he drove 4 hours just to see your work. She turned, the polite smile freezing on her face. Marcus stood before her, more formally dressed than she'd ever seen him in dark slacks and a charcoal button-down, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and determination. I'll leave you two, Martin said, sensing the charged atmosphere. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, simultaneously, What are you? I needed to... They both stopped, the ghost of a smile crossing Marcus's face. Ladies first, he said quietly. What are you doing here? Sophia managed, heart hammering. The restaurant is closed on Mondays. He glanced around the gallery. I've spent 3 months trying to convince myself I made the right decision that day. Then I saw the review of your exhibition in the Times. His eyes returned to hers. They called your work intimate revelations of human passion, said your centerpiece captured more emotion than most photographers manage in an entire career. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell the familiar scent of rosemary and cedar that always clung to him. I had to see what you saw when you looked at me. Sophia led him to the central photograph. Watched his face as he took it in, his own hands creating the dish he'd made the night they first made love. This is how you see me, he said, his voice rough with emotion. It's how I've always seen you, she answered. Someone who puts their whole heart into what they create, even when they're afraid of being hurt again. Marcus took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I was a coward. I pushed you away because I was terrified of losing you slowly, of watching you realize that a reclusive chef in the mountains wasn't enough compared to the life you deserve. You never asked what I thought I deserved, she challenged gently. I'm asking now. Sophia intertwined their fingers. I deserve someone who sees me as clearly as I see them. Someone who understands that passion, for work, for life, for each other, isn't something to fear or contain. It's something to nurture, even when it's complicated. I've been developing a new concept, Marcus said, a hint of his old confidence returning. Pop-up dining experiences in different cities. Starting with New York, coincidentally. His eyes held hers. The first is scheduled for next weekend. I'll need a photographer to document it. Sophia's breath caught. Are you offering me a job, Chef Reed? I'm offering you a partnership. In every sense. He hesitated. If you want it. Instead of answering, she led him to a small alcove away from the remaining guests. When I left, you said clean breaks are less painful in the long run. I was wrong, he admitted, cupping her face in those hands she'd immortalized. The break wasn't clean and the pain hasn't lessened. Every dish I've made since you left has been missing something essential. What? The person I was making it for? His forehead touched hers. I love you, Sophia. I loved you watching the rain that first night, and I love you now. Distance hasn't changed that. When their lips finally met, it felt like returning home after a long journey. Familiar, yet somehow new. Comfortable, yet thrilling. So, Marcus whispered against her mouth, does this mean you'll consider my business proposition? Sophia smiled, genuinely for the first time in months. I think we could arrange something, but I have conditions. Name them. The photography studio above your restaurant needs better lighting, and the chef needs to remember that some things, like us, get better with distance and time. Like a good wine? Marcus laughed, the sound unfettered and joyful. I believe that can be arranged. Though I should warn you, I'm still not the easiest man to live with. And I still snore, she countered. We'll manage. As they left the gallery hand in hand, stepping into the crisp autumn evening, Sophia realized that sometimes the most beautiful photographs and the most beautiful relationships emerged from unexpected storms, capturing moments between broken pasts and uncertain futures, where two people chose to create something perfect together.